Hey, Jay, how's it going?
And yourself?
Good, thanks.
Well, it's 6:01. We can get started.
Jay, you want me to pull up the agenda?
Yes, please. We're missing Colleen and Lisa, from what I can tell. Oh, Colleen's here. All right, just Lisa then. But we're good to go.
Okay, I'll go pull it up.
Do you want to start it also?
I'll let Frank or Andrew start us since I'm sharing screen. Are they able? Andrew, can you kick us off?
Yes, good evening. You're all set now to start.
Okay, it is 6:02 and we'll call to order. We have the agenda up and public comment. Andrew, or is Frank on? Or is either one? Oh, Frank, do you see any comments or anyone in the audience?
We have one audience, one attendee, and no two attendees. So, it's Andy. I'll bring him over.
Looks like, yeah, Andy needs to come over.
Yep.
Is that what you just said?
Yep.
Good deal.
No public comment.
Okay, moving on. Review of the minutes. So, Don, we have March 14th, March 7th, and March 14th. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yes.
I know we sent back. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Are we good to go? Any comments? Can we get a motion to approve them then?
So moved.
Mark, okay. Second?
Second. Oh, Colleen had it. Give it to Colleen.
Give it to Colleen, okay. Mark
Can't
and
draw.
Colleen.
It's a tie.
All right, so roll call. Don?
Yes, approved.
Brian?
Yes.
Geetha?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
You have Colleen, Frank?
Aye.
Todd?
Join late. I assume these are the minutes.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. John Miller?
I did not have a chance to review them, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, and then John.
Aye.
All right. So Frida, did you get that? You're all set?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Lynch Elementary School. So we're going to have the update on the PSR from Charlie.
Hi, good evening. It's a very, very brief update. We have not gotten any comments back from the MSBA on the PSR as of yet, although we did have a conference call with them last week, and they said they are busy working on those comments. So as soon as we get them, we will have 10 days in which to respond. We do have an upcoming on Wednesday FAS meeting, which is a Facilities Assessment Subcommittee meeting. We did during that call also go over that upcoming meeting and sort of the guidelines and the protocols, and that was all just sort of perfunctory sort of rules of the road. They did indicate to us that some of the things that are going to come back in the PSR feedback comments from them are going to be asking for more clarity around phasing and logistics, and more clarity and commentary around the transfer of the water department land from the water department to the school department. So we're expecting those to be some of the comments. Otherwise, they didn't warn us about any large issues that are upcoming. So that was encouraging. So we wait.
All right. Any questions or comments for Charlie? Okay. Next item is the 315 school committee. I did attend the meeting last week. We went over, Charlie had a presentation with Charlie, and I think it went very well. A lot of questions and comments. The biggest take back from that was a request to see what would be involved to vacate the school completely, which we would work out the financial side. Charlie has worked up those numbers, and Frank has to work on what he could do with the kids. And that's the biggest takeaway. Frank, are you able to update any of that on what we can do, or is it still in the air?
Sure. No, I can provide an update just to say that I did have a really good meeting. We had a good meeting with with a little task force I brought together of Lynch parents and staff. Charlie did a great job walking them through the project and updating them, which was really helpful. I think just you kind of forget how much we've seen it, and it's good to get other people on board with this along the way. The discussion, I was surprised in that people got themselves pretty quickly to feeling like getting all the kids off the site was the right thing to do. And I think that to a certain extent, the presentation got them there. The graphic of the playground with the fence line running right through the middle of it, I think is kind of a powerful image. So the discussion really swung over to that as an option more so than trying to get a couple of grade levels off site. People had some great ideas and great feedback. And where they ended was actually they wanted to they actually really kind of as a group seem to be leaning towards trying to find support for Article 1 and Question 1, Article 1, and did not really want to meet again until after town meeting when the decision is made by town meeting as to what the direction will be. So it was productive, and they were a very thoughtful group to bring together, and they gelled really quickly too, given the fact that they had not met as a group before. Anybody answer any questions or?
Can I add to Frank to this, that it's not that the school committee was, what's the word I'm looking for? We didn't want to act sort of with a hair trigger here and add a lot of cost to the project. The question that really came up that drove this was, I think the committee was understanding really for the first time that when we say the Lynch project will be complete in the fall of 25, that just means we have a certificate of occupancy and kids can walk through the door. It was this realization that we'll still have most of the original Lynch still there yet to be abated and then demolished. And then you have to, do the site work, the playgrounds, the parking, the landscaping, et cetera. And so sort of to a layperson, the project wouldn't really be complete until closer to like summer of 26. And so then the question was from one of the members, if you could get all the kids off site, could you finish the whole project by the fall of 25? And Charlie was quick to say, yes, absolutely. And then the follow-up was, would we save any money? And the answer was, yes, absolutely. Charlie did a good job avoiding some pretty pointed questions about, well, how much on this, that, and the other. But just on general conditions alone, the feeling was we might save close to $1 million. And then I think Peter Bradley has subsequently verified that. So the committee so Jay is coming back to the school committee tomorrow night to sort of present what it would cost, but to talk about cost avoidance, cost savings, and risk avoidance. And we've begun to kind of develop a matrix to try to capture that. So the feeling of the committee was we may well, at the end of the day, kind of recapture that, let's say $3 million that it would cost in some extra modular space to be able to get everybody off site. So it seemed worthwhile to pursue. And that's what everybody's been working on. And I can share that list, Jay, if you want to, but I know Colleen has her hand up.
Sure, you can go ahead. Oh, Colleen and then Geetha. Do you want to, Colleen?
Yeah, no, I just had a quick question. I haven't been through this process before in the EFPBC. Is there normally a survey that gets sent out to the community? I just wonder how much the community, I understand there's a task force that's mixed between Lynch parents and teachers. I've had a couple discussions this week, and all of the feeling was, no, we can't all go to Parkhurst. So I don't know if that's just a subset of the folks who typically walk to school. So that is kind of a different thing than folks who are normally used to getting in their cars every day, kind of thing. So anyway, it was just a question. I just don't know how the process goes, and if there's anything beyond the task force in terms of checking in with families.
I just quickly to share, I don't know how it's gone in the past. We would definitely, once we get closer to figuring out if that is truly an option and doable, which I do think it is, once we get more concrete plans together, we would absolutely communicate that with the community and have open sessions and public sessions where people could come in and, ask more specific questions. I would hesitate to kind of put it out in a way that made it feel like a vote necessarily, because in the end, we need to do what we think is right.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is not going to be the most popular decision I haven't made very many popular decisions that I've been here. This will not be one of them either, because people, they don't want the change, but they want the change. They want the new building, but they don't want to go through or no. So I was just happy that, we had some people who were identified as being, people to have around the table, had a good conversation, but we will absolutely put more information out and get some more feedback from people as we go.
Yeah, I have to say, as a Lynch mom, I'm really conflicted about what the right thing is,
understand.
especially when I see the playground being a third or a quarter of what it is now, and all the other implications of noise and things like that. So I'm just saying, I can see both sides. I really, truly can. So.
It's not easy as a parent.
Can I offer, Colleen, in terms of sort of looking in the rearview mirror, I think there's always a certain amount of back and forth between the EFPBC and school committee. And a big part of it has to do with what's even possible. So if we look at Winchester High School as a great example, everybody on the EFPBC would have loved to have avoided the cost of all those modular classrooms. And we had talked about building a new Winchester High School on Skilling's Field. The problem was the fourth culvert wasn't in yet. And the area of Skilling's Field that was outside the 100-year floodplain was like the size of my dining room table. So the timing just didn't work. And if all that flood mitigation work had been done, that might have been an option. So we necessarily had to look at sort of a phased occupied project. But then like on VO, there was an opportunity to get those kids off site and basically create a greenfield project. And so that was, a recommendation of the EFPBC, but it was certainly something the school committee was on board with and kind of had to be because it involved using Parkhurst, right? And so I think in this instance, we started from the right place, which was to try to minimize swing space because it's expensive and it's not reimbursed. And the school committee kind of taking it all in had to say, well, and I think Charlie made this good point at the last meeting, which was even when that building opens up in the fall of 25, all that site work isn't done yet. So now we're bringing all the kids back and all the teachers and staff, and we don't really have in place all the parking that's needed and so on and so forth. So it'd be difficult for a while yet to come. And Jay, others have questions, but I can throw up that sheet at any time if you like.
Right, let's go through the questions. We got Geetha and then Mark.
Yeah, I guess we have to go in the order we have our hands, right, Jay?
Yes.
So, Chris, you have to stay back. So anyway, Jay, I just want to touch up, I guess, on the feedback Frank got, having the PSR with the MSBA. Do we need to brief them about this status where we are at. That's question number one. In other words, we are sort of aligning the fact, from the feedback from the community is sort of like they want to have the kids away from the site. Having said that, Jay, I wanted to reiterate, I guess that between, just a small group between you and, John and Meg, and sort of exchanging the email and where we left off. And I'm sure I have listed 1, 2, 3 to 10 in a deliberate manner, very sequentially, explaining the concept of phase 1. And did you have any feedback? I guess I just wanted to say, just echoing the cost of the trailers in my mind, that's not a factor, has to play a role unless we have vetted ourselves to the questions and concerns in terms of the long-term performance of the building, Jay. So we need to get to the bottom. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but the fact that I pointed to you in a brief email, we are throwing risk factors. So that is a factor of a design risk, and sort of see. So I guess I just wanted to say we need to get to the bottom. I pointed out right off the bat, it's glaring at us, so we cannot neglect it. And cost of the trailers, it's not the trump card that we can play anymore. That's all I wanted to say.
Right. You do have a couple open questions from your last email that we're working on,
So
and they will get answered.
Yeah. So we cannot keep on talking. We want to save the cost of the trailers. In my mind, that's not the correct answer. So
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. Mark, and then John Miller.
Sure. Two-part question. One, the first part is, I'm assuming if we're looking at options to take all of the students off site, one option is to use Parkhurst plus trailers if that's available. And the second, presumably, would be to find a totally disconnected site to do all trailers for the entire school. Just wanted to ask if those are both being looked at. And then the second part of the question is, will you have numbers in advance of next week's school committee meeting regarding the potential construction cost savings and the potential costs of 1 or 2 temporary options for students?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. The numbers are in the works, but then Charlie's working on a few of them, and a few pieces come from the school department also. So they're not ready. I hope they are ready soon. It would be only fair to get them out there. And the mix of modulars would be a partial of Parkhurst either way. There would be either more modules on that site, but the site would only be Parkhurst. Is that correct, Charlie?
That's the only, well, so the scenario, one scenario is, yes, the only thing under consideration right now is the Parkhurst is the answer.
But in one scenario, you'll have more use of Parkhurst upper floor and fewer modulars, and in the other, you'll have less use of Parkhurst upper floor and more
modulars.
Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Like there's no plan out there to just take the fields and put a modular city out.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
John Miller?
I was just going to, again, urge people, just make sure that that the two options are both viable, so that in either case, no matter what happens at town meeting, we don't blow up the Lynch construction schedule. And I, because I think we're very, very lucky. It seems like we all have nothing but good news now about the Lynch underlying construction. So we don't want in any case to possibly blow that construction schedule up.
That's a good point. Chris?
Colleen had her hand up, but was that new or? Oh,
No.
Colleen says no. Yeah, so I'm glad John Miller just made that point. So it's worth. So what we're asking, Charlie has some slides he could probably show to illustrate this, but what we're asking for Springtown meeting, it included, by the way, in Article 2, is about $170,000, which is TAP A's time and some of Hill's time to put together a procurement package for modulars, not to put it on the street, but to get it ready. And I think originally we were thinking, last we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with EFPBC, we thought, okay, we get the package ready, then we wait till January, for the debt exclusion override, then we can put it out on the street. I think it was Meg, maybe it was Hill. Somebody had the bright idea, actually you could do better. You could wait until fall town meeting. If it passes fall town meeting, as I hope it will, then the team can get the package ready and issue it, let's say in December, with the expectation that contractors' numbers will be held for 60 days. Then we can have the qualified low bidder ready to go. And then in January, when the debt exclusion override passes, we don't have to put anything out on the street. We just have to sign a contract and go, to address that very point John Miller just made, because these modulars, they do take time. They have to be built. They got to be, put on a truck. They come from somewhere. They got to arrive on the site, et cetera. So what we're asking for at Springtown meeting is all about seizing whatever schedule we can to be sure we can get kids off site.
Thank you.
Good point.
Charlie, do you have those slides you can bring up?
I should be able to with any luck. Screen 2.
And John Miller, while waiting, do you have another question?
Parkhurst with a couple of my grandkids. My two of my kids went to first and kindergarten at Bartlett. There's a place to put the 8 classrooms kind of on an angle that wouldn't involve moving the swing sets or the playgrounds. I think we can do a little better, a more robust look at how to do that. But I'm also concerned, Chris, that no matter which alternative fails or passes, that we're not in a box. So that if we only have 12 months to design, get approval, fund, and build the carriage house, and we can't do that because that's not going to fit in the time, we still don't want to blow up the Lynch schedule. So either we have to be, seems to me, we have to be able to move in either direction here. And so both of these alternatives have to be real so that when town meeting does whatever it does, we're not screwed.
I agree with you 100%. And I think Charlie has even updated his timeline from the last time we saw it to show the modulars. I don't know if those are in here or not.
The modulars are not. We only have the only thing you requested was the cost data and the scenario. We didn't update the drawings of the modulars. Oh, we did the timeline. We did update.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking about.
Okay, that's in here. Do you want me to proceed here?
Yes, please.
Okay, so these were slides that were presented to the Finance Committee most recently. So there are 2 articles. There's an Article 1 and an Article 2. The Article 1 is on the left in blue. The Article 2 is on the right in green. So the Article 1, which everybody's been talking about as option 1 as the preferred option, considers the possibility of renovating the carriage house. As we all know, I'm reiterating information everyone is well aware of, but renovates the carriage house so that district admin can go to the carriage house, which allows the Parkhurst to have some limited upgrades to allow it to accommodate probably 3 grades of students in the existing Parkhurst. And then because of this change that's now being discussed that has come up since the last building committee meeting, in addition to that, there would be the addition of 8 modulars to the Parkhurst to accommodate 2 more grades. And that gets 5 grades at the Parkhurst school. That is the preferred option with the addition of the modulars. So that's the rounded number of 9.6. That's not the ask at town meeting. That's simply the total cost. Article 2 would be only going back to the original, the original option 2 and the original idea of just putting 8 modular classrooms at the Parkhurst, and John Miller just talked about maybe there's a better way to do that, and that would be fine. It certainly can be studied. And that would include at least some, we know it includes site modifications. And I think John's suggesting, well, maybe we could save a little bit on not having to modify the playground or something, but we'd still probably need to do modifications to, we'd probably still have to add some parking. I don't think you could possibly run the Parkhurst campus with the amount of parking is there now. But anyway, the rounded number there comes up to 3.2 million. And again, that's not the ask at town meeting, that's the total cost. Jay, are we stopping for questions, or do you want?
Why don't we stop for questions? We have Brian and then Mark when we get, in case they're on this slide. Brian, you want to go ahead?
It might be a dumb question. Aren't we trying to relocate 6th grades, not 5?
I'm going to let Dr. Hackett take that.
We're trying to relocate 6th grades, but kindergarten, we're making an assumption on kindergarten, I believe, is what you're doing here, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay. So we have kind of picked around the idea, and I think it's very doable for kindergarten to be placed elsewhere, although that remains in discussion and had some interesting feedback from the parent and teacher group the other day on it. So.
I mean, the plan, just that's what it accommodates right now. You obviously could add more modular classrooms to the Parkhurst to get more classrooms on site.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a slide that would go for more public consumption, but if it were, I would suggest that it be clear what the end result is in terms of a finished final condition for the 2 alternates. Because looking at it just on the face of it, it appears that there are 2 options that achieve the same goal, but one of them costs $6.5 million more than the other. And I don't think that's actually the end result, but I see it on the right-hand side, all modulars leased and returned, site improvements are temporary, but I think it would be good to show like there is a permanent benefit to one side and it comes at a cost. There's no long-term benefit to the other side. So having that information either on this slide or on a follow-up slide, I think would be very helpful if it gets shared more broadly.
Good point. John Miller again?
Yeah, well, see, so what I was saying before, Charlie, is that Article 2 here should be adjusted so that if all the students are going to come out in Article 1, all the students come out in Article 2, so that the effect on Lynch is 0. In other words, whether Article 1 passes or Article 2 passes, the effect on Lynch is 0. Now, if all the students are gone, they're either all at Parkhurst and including and there's no carriage house, or they're all at Parkhurst and there is a carriage house. But Lynch still gets done faster. We save the monies there, and it's not the way it looks here. It's a Hobson's choice. It's obvious that if the decision is to move all the kids out of the school, Article 2 is a no, right? So it's a loaded alternative, and I don't see why we're doing that. I mean, just move them out. If that's the decision, move them out. We're moving them out. If that's not the decision, that's not the decision. But these aren't apples and apples. This is apples and donuts.
Chris?
But, I'm just one voice. I'm just one voice.
It's just hard to explain, John. I understand what you're saying too. Charlie, the money, the ask is to do whatever has to be done from TAP A to design it.
Right.
They're either designing for 8 or they're designing for 12. The price is still the same.
Yeah, Jay, I was just going to ask if Charlie could go to that next slide, because
Yeah, he just did. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So what TAP A is telling us is a practical matter. And Vivian maybe or Charlie could explain more about how this works. But the modular companies like really do a lot of the heavy lifting here in terms of putting the design package and so forth together. So TAP A, will have some supplemental parking to design, and whether they have to do more of it or less of it doesn't apparently have a big impact on their fee. Obviously, it's harder to accommodate 10 modulars than 12, but and my understanding is there's some flexibility there, John, if they need to provide more, but it really does not affect the ask at Springtown meeting. I do think what we run into, though, John, operationally, is if central office stays at Parker. I mean, well, Charlie said this very clearly at the last school committee meeting. Central office has to go. It is a practical matter. There's no way to keep central office at Parkhurst and bring all the Lynch kids there. It would be, the first thing that comes to mind would be just a traffic nightmare and gridlock. I don't know how we get that many people, back and forth, yellow buses, teachers, staff, and everything. But as it just pertains to Springtown meeting, which is to get some money going for the design side, this request at 169,750, that's Article 2, the same amount of money is also requested under Article 1. And Charlie has indicated some flexibility there about whether that's 8 or 10, but at some point you run out of space for modulars.
Does that answer your question, John?
John, you're on mute.
All I'm saying is you'd like it to be a straight up choice where there's two viable options that the community is comfortable with, the kids are going to be comfortable with, the superintendent's comfortable with, and then it comes down to dollars on the swing space, and it's not, hey, one of these alternatives really sucks and we don't want it, but no one wants to do that. No one wants to do that to anybody, right? I just think there should be apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, I don't know how to reword this to what you're saying. I maybe because we're so involved, I understand it clearly, and I'm not looking at it the same way.
If you go back one slide, just go back one slide. So it's the budget for Article 2 is 12 modular classrooms, isn't it?
Right.
And then they're an apples to apples comparison, and the savings that because if the decision by the school committee is, hey, we want to get Lynch done faster, and we want to get it done by September of 25, and that's what we want to do, then that's the decision, and all the kids are coming out.
It's more than 12 modular classrooms too, wouldn't it?
It would be, yeah, you'd be talking about, wouldn't you be talking about
20?
Well, right. You'd be talking, if you're talking for a grade, and you're talking about in the district admin stays in the Parkhurst, then you have to provide modulars for the entire school. So you're talking more like 20, right?
So if it's 20 and it becomes the stupid option, then it won't be voted. But all I'm saying is, whatever, you understand.
But right, but the 20 modulars become part of the project, not part of the ask. This what we're looking at here really shouldn't even be out there, because the modules, this is what you're looking at. The modules become part of the funding agreement.
Right.
Well, they really don't, but they can become part of the override.
We have to show it right, Jay, right? Even if it's not part of it, Article 1 and Article 2 is sort of confusing the public, I think.
Well, we don't know what it will be until we design it. We're asking for the money to design it.
Correct. But okay, don't call it Article 1 and Article 2 then show the numbers, as John Miller said, apples and apples, right? So we are not I totally echo the thought John and Mark shared a moment ago. In other words, we have to have two tables next to each other, as if we are not in a box. There's so many things. So
Right.
We're sort of looking at the numbers, and then you bring up the other things that you're talking about when you move on to the next slide.
Right. So we need, what you're saying is we need an Article 2 alternate that shows a total move out of Parkhurst in the numbers. So that would say 20 or whatever modules, as if the carriage house didn't go. because that's why alternate 2 went. So
Yeah, at which point I think the cost would be very similar because you at $250,000 a modular, which is what the estimator suggested, that's $5 million.
except that it's project money versus upfront money for the carriage house.
I mean,
But it's not reimbursable money.
It's not reimbursed anyways, right?
Right.
It's not reimbursed.
again, we haven't seen the other benefits in this table. That's fine. We are not telling the contractor to do A, do B, but having said that, these boxes has to be apples and apples. So that's all.
Lisa?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it needs to be really spelled out because the average person looking at this isn't going to really understand it. So the more detail you get, that's going to be spelled out. So they know that it's, 20 modulars versus, something else is really what I think the person's going to need to see. Even though I know this is the initial upfront design costs and all that, it just, I think it needs to be spelled out a little more in order, like apples to apples, if that's the term you want to use. I'm just thinking if somebody's looking at this for the first time and trying to get it approved a little more. That's it.
Jay, I think Mark had his hand raised as well.
Yes, Mark. Mark and then John.
Yeah, so it sounds like there are kind of three pieces to this. One is there's a funding ask in the article, which we see right here. And I think in any case, that funding ask doesn't change. Then there are anticipated project costs for the carriage house, partial use of Parkhurst plus some modulars. Then that's the Article 1 project cost expected. Then Article 2 is either, I guess Article 2 then, if we don't go forward with the carriage house in Parkhurst, Article 2 then is just 20 trailers outside of Parkhurst, and the anticipated project cost should reflect that, as John had indicated. And I think that gets us to a place where everyone sees this is the town meeting ask for funding right now, but this is the long-term funding expectation given the choice of Article 1 or Article 2. And then lastly, as I had asked before, like the long-term capital change to the school facilities.
Great. I think John's next, and then Brian, and then Colleen.
Yeah, it may confuse it more than, but is it, I guess, to the point of getting all the information in front of people, if we have Article 1 and Article 2, is it possible to show the savings to the accelerated construction schedule and cost savings of not having students back at Lynch in Article 1? And then, that may be not a quantifiable number at this point, and maybe it would confuse things because it's not an ask, but it's it's an element of it. And then the second thing, is it even possible to do the 20 modulars? I guess it sounds like it is, but it's not.
Well, one of the things that might happen is the offices may be in one or two of the modules to use the classrooms, as a mix like that. Brian, next. Colleen,
so I've been trying to think about this in various permutations myself. The problem articulating this is that we have an ask, alternate A and alternate B, but then there's further implications in both scenarios, right? And I think we need to be very careful that we don't end up at town meeting with, 3 days of discussion about people saying relative to alternate B, like, does it really need to be 20 trailers? Why can't the central administrative offices go rent office space somewhere? Or can they work remotely? They should work from home. And if that's the direction this all goes, and we end up in a situation where there's mass confusion around those subjects, I think we're in a bad place. And I don't have a necessary solution to that. But the fundamental question is, okay, we're moving these, if we all agree, and it sounds like the consensus is moving towards we do, that all the, full Lynch gets relocated to Parkhurst, then either admin stays and there's tons of trailers, or they don't. But we have this multi-step decision tree, which doesn't lend itself easily to this choice one, choice two. And I don't know how we cut through that.
Yes, exactly. Colleen?
So to just sort of piggyback on that, I agree. When I look at the first slide and the second slide, I see just the pretty significant price tag of the carriage house. Now, I understand the nuances of this being an investment and things like that, but I would agree with Brian's point that it looks like this is a pretty expensive relocation of, is it like 8 to 10 staff? Is it 20 staff? I don't. So, and I know that that's a hot button issue for town meeting members because that was on each of their descriptions is for election day last week, and is getting just like a finger on my pulse on this. It didn't seem like it was overwhelmingly in favor of the carriage house. So I think yes, I agree. We need to have a packaging of the apples to apples that understands the accelerated time schedule, the savings there, and have like a realistic notion of the number of classrooms and the cost for the modulars. I also think we potentially have to have an option 3 or Article 3, which is, if Article 1 and 2 get that we can compare them apples to apples, and Article 3 could potentially be if some students remain on site. So perhaps that's the kind of the third thing. If we're going to assume that the best case scenario is to get everyone off site, and that's an Article 1 and 2 comparison, then I think we still need to have some sense of Article 3, just in case there's pushback or.
Right. Right. Meg, next, and also Chris, if you want to get those slides up with the comparison, if you have them, that'd be great.
You want to put that up now?
Sure. While waiting for Meg goes next.
So I was just going to comment earlier, but there's 2 places to sort of make your point. And one is either at the presentation of town meeting on the floor of town meeting, or 2, and you could do both of these in the background. Now it gets a little confusing. So it'd have to be drafted, very carefully so that it made sense when you were looking at the first article and then the second article. And to Colleen's point, I think we don't have the time right now to add a third article. So I think we need to deal with it in the motions for the 2 articles. And what I'm a little unclear about, and as you see when I pull up the motions or Chris puts them up in a little while when we get to that agenda item, we've broken the first article into 2 motions and the second article just the 1 motion. So we want to look at that too carefully. That was it.
Chris, and then Brian. Colleen, do you have? Yeah, then Brian.
Okay. So this was the grid, Jay, that a couple of people have been asking about.
Right.
This is just really a first pass. We roughed this out real quick for the meeting we had with the finance committee last week. And so we, trying to keep it sort of simple, we thought of 3 categories. There's one category, which is savings, meaning literally savings from things we were already planning on spending money on. Then there's cost avoidance, which are things we surely are going to have to pay for that we hadn't budgeted for yet. And then there's risk avoidance, which is not really monetized, but then that list could grow. So on just project duration, there's significant savings due to shortening general conditions. Frank had reached out. Frank, you had investigated the cost of utilities on site at the existing school, and it's like around $175,000 a year. And so the idea being, if you could abandon Lynch in June of 23 instead of June 25, you're going to save. Now there's some offset there if you're adding modulars at Parker, so we recognize that. Charlie and his, so the Tapé and Hill, if you think about this original idea of kind of taking a bite off of Lynch, so imagine we're going to have to abate part of Lynch, demolish part of Lynch, then build a temporary weather wall at the end of Lynch, temporary parking. That all has to be, designed and bid and get under contract, and that's a lot of work. So there's some significant savings there for that early package. And then that's really what 3 and 4, are about. And then line item 5, I hope you guys can read that. The school committee and the administration has a 5-year capital plan. And that actually includes putting almost $350,000 into the Lynch we have, because there's some things that are on the verge of failure already. And the expectation that we're going to be in that building until the spring of 25. So if we're able to, again, abandon the building in the spring of 23, we can avoid throwing more money at a building that's about to come down. And then I think this was the part where the school committee was really putting the screws to Charlie a little bit, which was, what would we save in terms of construction cost if we shorten the overall duration of the project? And I think that's very hard to kind of pinpoint right now. But one thing that we did look at to model for FinCom was that I guess our industrial hygienist has thrown a number. They think there's around $1 million in abatement at Lynch. So think about awarding a contract for that they could get started on in the summer of 23 versus having to wait until the summer of 25. That's money. I mean, that's just escalation on $1 million, whether that's 4% a year or 6% a year. Abatement work is pretty specialized, so I don't know what's happening in that particular market. But just when you take one specific element of the project, you can carry 2 years escalation. You can't do that for everything. But you could do that for abatement. You could do it for demolition, and then of course a lot of that site work as well could get advanced. So just taking an early swag at this, it's $2 million, maybe plus. And then on the operating piece, Frank has begun to think about, and I haven't pushed him yet for numbers, but we should do that soon, Frank. If we don't get all the kids off site, it means that we're sort of operating 6 elementary sites for 2 years. If you imagine you take half the Lynch kids and you move into Parkhurst and you leave the other half there, we need assistant principals, we need nurses, we got custodial staff. And Jay, do you want to say a word about line item 2 and 3 once more?
Just keep on preaching that when we bid it with an occupied site, the price is going to go up. Even though the estimators don't have it in there, it will go up, and it will be not as attractive to certain contractors probably in this market we're in right now.
And then Charlie, any thoughts you want to add on risk avoidance? I mean, these really came from you, I think.
Well, I definitively think that you'll reduce number of change orders and the complexity of construction. And I definitively think we know we have better schedule certainty, right? Because there's less unknowns. You give the contract the entire site, you tell them to take it, you are much more likely to have project success. And these very, very tight-quartered, phased construction projects are much more likely to run behind schedule, run into glitches. But there's no way, there's just simply no way to assign a value to that. You just know from experience that that's. So when we talk about risk avoidance, we're just saying we're limiting risk if we have an empty site. We're increasing risk if we have a occupied site. But of course, nobody can look in a crystal ball and know precisely what that means. But we're limiting risk certainly by by giving the contract to the entire site. There's no doubt.
We have Brian Geetha, John Miller, and Colleen.
So
Brian?
Just connecting this to back to the 2 article choices. And I'm just trying to think through this and try to narrow our choices and get to a more coherent, less permutations version of this. So there's obviously significant savings if Lynch can be fully vacated for the project, as shown is what this slide is showing. I'm wondering if that's really only attributable to article, the first version of the article, and not the second. So as in, if we can show this 2 million offsetting the preferred scenario and not the second, because I'm wondering, is 20 trailers, like, is that possible? Or do we even know if that's possible? Like utilities availability, and like, how does that even work with gym class in February with 20 trailers on site? So are we really talking about, if we don't move the admin out of the way, if we do move the admin somewhere else, get them out of the way, we can save $2 million by accelerating the project to full completion. And if we don't, like, do we even, is that 20 trailer scenario even feasible or viable or palatable in any way, shape, or form? So as in, we would attribute this 2 million of savings only to the first scenario is what I'm wondering.
Good point. Geetha?
Yes,
Geetha,
I
you're on
wanted
mute.
to, sorry. I wanted to go to the thought, I guess, as Brian was pointing out, we have to sort of reduce the permutation aspect of it. So at least from, the couple of slides that we have in front of us, at least as a committee, are we coming into the, agreement? Yes, we are trying to get the kids off the site. Having said that, for the alternate one, could we at least begin to add a number to the, cost premium that Jay was mentioning, to move it up under the savings? Why do we need to keep it under cost avoidance? And I can also add number 8, Jay, that you would agree with me. There's a potential that it would go from shallow to deep foundation. So that's another cost savings that would come out of by having the kids, everyone away from the site. So, do you get it, Jay? What I'm trying to say?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I really want to list. Now it's a time we need to list it here. We cannot keep it under the table. So.
The cost avoidance is a number we just cannot put a number on.
I don't think so,
yeah.
Jay, because especially cost premium from the occupied side. It could be very well be 3% of the estimate that we have,
Yeah.
We can just throw in a number, how we are, to at least begin to build a case, we cannot keep on saying cost of the trailers. These are things that we know for fact, so.
Can I ask Charlie to weigh on this, Jay? Because Geeta's asking a really good question, but my understanding is it's under cost avoidance because we're not carrying the premium in the current estimate.
Correct. You don't know. I mean, you can say more bidders, avoids qualified bidders opting to pass the Lynch project for another less restrictive one. That's a really, really reasonable assumption. There's no guarantee. Maybe everybody will be starving to death and you're going to have incredible bidders. So these are reasonable assumptions. There's just you can't quantify them. We can quantify the $1 million because the $1 million is directly out of the estimate and it's about duration. We know factually that if we make the project shorter, we're taking general conditions, overhead, and profit off the table. So there's no question that every time we shorten duration, we are directly benefiting from a cost point of view.
John Miller?
I was just going to say, I think, Brian, I have a different take on the exact same point you were raising, Brian. If alternate 2 is revised so that it's in parallel, right? So in other words, alternate 1 is the carriage house plus the admins moved out and we need less modulars. And alternative 2 is the admin stays and we need more modulars, but they're parallel. Then the $2 million shown that Chris is showing here on the slide is available as a credit in either of those alternatives. So in alternative 2, that's an 8 module credit, right? So, we're offsetting the cost of 8 modules if it's $250 a piece. So, I get it. But I think we ought to be even-handed in presenting 2 viable options that we could live with. And just as an aside, when my oldest son was in the 7th grade, we had the massive flood that wiped out Winchester High School. And for 6 months, the high school kids went to school from 6 to noon. The middle school kids went to middle school from noon to 6. So we doubled up. Everyone pulled their stuff out of the classrooms. It was a nightmare. But, things could be worse.
Right.
Just to follow up on
the shortest time makes the most sense too.
Yeah. Just to follow up, John, on your comment, my question is sort of, do we have, and maybe this is a Charlie question, do we actually know that the site could actually support 20 modulars? And that's just a question of could it or couldn't it? Do we have any evidence of utilities availability? Would it actually fit? Would it be operationally feasible to operate? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But in the spirit of just trying to understand what the constraints imply, is it the case that if we're talking about scenario 2, we're really talking about, no, we can't actually fully vacate Lynch? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's my question.
We would have to look at it. I mean, I think what would happen is you would, I know John Miller has some views on how we lay out those modulars, but based on right now, the way we did it the first go around without any more pushing it around, we would need to extrude that long bar farther. I think it would go all the way to the street. And then I think you'd set up some sort of pickup drop-off piece up in the softball field. And then you'd have to reconstruct the entirety of the parking up there, right? Because you're going to lose all the parking down below because it's all going to be modulars. So at that point, not only are we going to be spending the $5 million or whatever it's going to be in modulars, $3 million, we're also going to be increasing dramatically our site costs, right? Because we're suddenly going to be reconstructing all the parking and we're suddenly going to be reconstructing roadways. So that's my instinct without literally looking at it. As for feasibility, I mean, we know we can get power, we know we can get water. I don't know much really about sewer capacity there. And, you know, if we had a water issue and we need to do fire protection, we could do a fire pump, which is expensive, but is possible. So those things are technically feasible usually, sometimes at a cost.
Yeah, I'll stop jumping my turn, but there's a 24-month wait for Eversource service upgrades right now in many cases. So like, do we need one if we were to accommodate 20 modulars?
And I don't know the answer to that.
Probably overhead, but Charlie also was discussed at the school committee that, and Frank agreed to it, that they would move out into even modulars before. So the 20 modulars would probably never be that amount because they would you'd use the school to the full capacity, even if you put a central office in less modulars outside. So I don't know if it would really be 20. We're just throwing a number until you can do some research and come up with that, exactly what would happen. The number of 20 is just being kicked around right now.
5 times 4.
Yeah, right. But if they got full use of the school.
If Frank really packed it in, you're saying we could get better use of modulars for the grown-ups.
Right. You could buy office modulars versus classroom modulars and get central office into a modular on the site and use the full use of the school as classrooms and maybe be down to 16 or 18, who knows? But you really have to look at that option first to see what can be happened. Colleen?
That's great. Jay, that was actually one of my points on getting the admin out potentially or in other areas. The second thing I just wanted to touch on, so it looks like there's a possible reduction of schedule to 10 months. And that doesn't change the move-in date, right? Then so I just wonder, again, if I were, I realize that I've got two hats on as like Lynch parent and impacted and EFPBC member. I don't know if there's any way to pinch anything a little bit further that we could change the move-in date, because I think that would change some hearts and minds around a few of these issues. If the construction schedule, if it was consolidated down to 12 months and our move-in date was 2024 instead of 2025. So I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know if the 10 months, because I know there are site things happening during that time. So just want to ask that question.
I don't think any contractor can deliver this project in a year. It's just too big.
But it wouldn't, okay, I guess.
The time it's voted on and funded.
Okay.
Well, just whenever. But
okay.
I mean, I just don't think there's any way, just the construction duration itself, it's just not achievable. So we're squeezing them by giving them sort of 20 months.
Got it. Okay.
Chris?
I wanted to say something that I would appreciate Don getting in the minutes or Frida getting in the minutes. So on top of all the other site utility things we just talked about, our town engineer and acting town manager would add stormwater management to that list. So every time we talk about supplemental parking lots, she's quick to say, what about stormwater management? So, the more lots or the greater the lot surface, the more we have to think very carefully about that, especially given the grade up there, which is pretty substantial.
Thank you.
Extra trailers at Ambrose, Chris. I haven't been there.
I'm sorry, you had a question about Ambrose?
Are there extra trailers at Ambrose not being used? I haven't been there lately.
There are two. They're not being used as classrooms. They're being used as office space.
Okay.
Well, not even office space, actually. They're being used for small group student pullout.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Gita, that bears on to that. Bring it back to earlier conversation about are we relocating 5 or 6 grades from Lynch, right? So, as Frank was saying, one option is we might take the kindergartners who would be coming to Lynch, all of whom live adjacent to some other line somewhere to some other school, right? I mean, there's Lynch families that live right across the street from the Morocco line and across the street from the Lincoln line and so on. So that's one option. But another option that has been kicked around with this task force that Frank set up was Lynch is, one of 4 elementary schools with a specialized learning center. The one at Lynch is focused on the autism spectrum. So we have kids who go to Lynch, who first of all are Lynchies because they live in that neighborhood. But we have kids who live in the Lincoln, VO, Morocco, Ambrose districts who are transported to Lynch because that's where we have that specialized learning center. So that's another option that's on the table. It's a way to get some kids off site. It would just mean moving that specialized learning center and all of the support to go with them. So there's different options that are out there that Dr. Hackett just needs to continue to kind of work through and certainly check with those families in that particular instance too.
Yeah. On a separate note, it's not the same thing. You just mentioned the stormwater. Certain things, I guess, certain, outfalls and something we have grandfathered in. I suppose if we go and touch it, then we come under the new DEP guidelines. So anyway, I just wanted to say, on a separate note, the other day, even the high school one that's going into the Judkins Pond, if we do anything, do any work, then we come under the new DEP guidelines in my mind. So it cannot be an outfall to the Judkins Pond. That's how I look at it anyway. So just stay away from it. So if it
There's a lot involved.
Yeah.
Are we all set with this, or can we move on? All right, review of the motions. Chris, do you have 2 motions to put up?
Meg, do you have those?
She sent them.
Oh, forgive me. I'll go look. She emailed those out. Let me go see. Tell me when they went out and I will find them.
6:04.
6:04. All right. I'm looking. Okay. Found an email from Meg. Let's look at Article 2 first, because that's the easier one. I'll share. There we go. You guys see that? I hope.
Yes.
Okay. So what's new here is so the motion language at town meeting, it largely repeats the article, but then gets much more specific because it's a financial article, so it has to be clear about the money we're seeking, and what it's for, and sort of and where that money comes from. So, Meg, do you want me to talk about this MSBA language? Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'm happy to have you do it. The only thing I should point out, I just highlighted that in yellow, the for which feasibility study. I'm not sure what that little segment of the sentence means, and if it's supposed to be.
That should not be there. I'm sure it's a
Okay.
carryover from,
Okay.
a couple of years ago.
I'll delete
So,
that.
so there was language that town meeting looked at a couple of years ago. We funded the feasibility study for Lynch. That was like $1.5 million. And so there was language in there that basically authorized management and the select board, to borrow for the feasibility study, but also made clear that it's eligible for reimbursement through a grant from the MSBA. Excuse me. And so this is basically the same language. I'm just scanning through this very quickly. All this language about Chapter 44, the bonds that may be issued, as I understand it, this gives management and the select board the flexibility. They could bond it, they could issue a ban. But at the end of the day, it's eligible to be included in the project funding agreement. It's not reimbursable by the state, but it could get rolled into the debt exclusion override. And there's no background language, as we were talking about earlier, so it will absolutely be important through words and graphics to sort of describe what this is. But Meg, this is something management is sending to bond council, right? I guess.
Yes, yeah, I just need to edit out that piece, and yeah, we'll send it off tomorrow morning.
And the idea is we'll have it back to vote on next Monday, correct?
Yes, we'll have it back this week, and we can vote on the 4th, the final language.
Okay.
All right, and I'll pull up Article 1 here. Just got to pull it up.
That was Article 1.
No, that was Article 2. So,
And just so everybody knows, so you're not confused, at town meeting, these will not be listed as Article 1 and 2. They will have a number associated with where they fall in, all the articles. So as soon as I know what those real article numbers are, we'll substitute those in.
So there's a proposed wordsmithing change here in the article, which management always has some leeway on if it helps. The article that the EFPBC approved basically spelled out the Sanborn carriage house work, and then in big capital letters said "and for the design, construction, alteration, Parkhurst." So here we're just proposing there's an A and a B to keep it really simple. That is similar format to how the select board presented the scope for the transfer station in the fall to town meeting. So whether management goes with what we originally submitted or that, it's just a little bit of wordsmithing. Meg,
So Chris, just as a point, I removed your A and B, or 1 and 2, whatever that you had when it was one motion. So the first motion related to the Article 1 is for the borrowing for the Sanborn carriage house. And the second motion is very similar language, it's almost exact, to Article 2, which is to borrow the 169,000, but then tie it into the debt exclusion. So if you go down, Chris, you scroll down.
By the way, Meg, I see what's that should just read what's highlighted. It should say "for which the town may be eligible."
Yeah, it's
literally those two words, feasibility study. I don't know why those are there.
I don't know why.
Sorry,
I figured they didn't belong there. Yeah. So that language is identical to Article 2 motion. So I think it will be important because, I think it will be important to make the distinction about what it is each one of these is gaining you, because I think there is some confusion around the fact that those two numbers are the same. So I think in the background for both of these articles, it will be really important because I'm still getting confused, and I've been working on this. So.
And Meg, since you've broken this up into two separate motions, then I presume we can just go back to what the EFPBC vote. There's no reason to have an A and a B anymore, right?
No, it makes sense.
I mean, I think you still can, and I mean,
it tracks the two motions, Chris. It makes it easier to understand.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
That's fine.
I don't see any reason why we can't change it after. I know the select board is voting the articles tonight.
Clearer is better. Whatever
Clearer
works.
is better. Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
would it make sense? Has the school committee decided that all the kids are moving? Is that fact now?
Well, tomorrow night, I will tell them what we found, but I think Frank is still working on a solution to get them out. And I don't know.
Okay, so, and you think these motions are independent of that decision? I mean, should we say in this, I'm just saying, should we be saying that both of these articles involve moving all the kids out of Lynch?
So,
we're
so
kind
most
of
of, yeah, John.
wishy-washy on that, right? We're kind of saying.
So article, I'll take a stab. I want Frank to weigh in too. So Article 1 accommodates it because we're freeing up Parkhurst. And in addition, we're bringing modulars in. So there's confidence we could do that. Article 2, it depends upon how many modulars we really need to bring. But as somebody pointed out earlier, maybe it was Jay, it doesn't really affect what we're asking for at town meeting. So there is this is why Jay is coming to the school committee tomorrow night, is to say, okay, you said you really, really wanted to find a way to get kids off site. This is how that could work. This is what we would save, either in dollars or in time. This is what it means in terms of what we're asking of town meeting. This is why, for instance, we're not even voting on any motions. So first of all, we need to share the motions with the EFPBC tonight, but we need to have that conversation at the table tomorrow night with school committee and figure out what their priority really is. I mean, in a big way, I feel like, John, the school committee kind of sets the guardrails for the EFPBC. We have to maneuver within those guardrails. And so we have to see what the school committee says tomorrow night.
Right.
But
So all I was saying was both motions should say that if that's the school committee's decision, the final wording should say we're going to move all the kids in both of them. And then it will become apparent when the additional description that Meg is talking about, it'll become apparent that both of these articles are achieving the same thing. All the kids are moving.
Then we need to wait till tomorrow night then.
I agree. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Does Frank have anything else to add to that? I mean, that's how I see the conversation going tomorrow night.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't know if the school committee is not specifically looking to take action. I mean, they're looking to have a conversation to get the update from EFPBC, and and as Chris said, I mean, part of this is a question of whether or not it's logistically doable, which I think it is, but it's going to involve a couple of different solutions.
If I had kids going into Lynch, and I would consider, and there were alternatives to fill in empty classrooms in other schools, I bet you'll have a little bit of migration for 2 years.
Right.
I mean, you may not need all 20. That's all I'm saying.
That's what we need, a little research. I don't think we need all 20 either, but we need to have a little bit of a research. Geetha?
Well, I just want to add, Jay, I guess, the Meg said it's confusing, I guess, and John Miller asked the question and then Frank added to this. So I think if the article is by the EFPBC, so in my mind, it's the question of, to begin with, has the EFPBC as a committee made the decision whether we want to have all the kids off the site? Isn't that the question to ask?
It's not our decision. The school committee tells us what they want. That's not our decision. We can only make options.
In other words, what I think the EFPBC through Jay has been really clear, Geetha, in saying what we were trying to do is to minimize swing space since it's not reimbursable. And now that we have a better understanding of this project and the schedule, the school committee has asked the question, what would it take if we found a way to get those kids off? What would be the consequence of that? And that's what sparked a very interesting conversation last week. But Jay's right. If the school committee were to say to us and to Frank, come hell or high water, get everybody off site, that is really a decision for the school committee to make 100%.
And then us, EFPBC as a committee has to make it work. We have to report back and find a way to make it work.
It's also our responsibility to say, okay, what you're asking of us is like impossible. I mean, if it can't be done, they're expecting us to say so. But other than that, we got to figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
It's not easy. Anyone else on the motions? So Meg, can you still go to the bond council tomorrow? Or do you want to wait a day so we have some update from the school committee?
No, I'd rather bring it to them. We can always tweak it.
Okay.
That adding that little bit of explanation is not going to change the format of it.
They might not even get to it in the same day anyways.
Right. Chris, I would just remind you that, the backgrounds need to be drafted and, available right about the same time the motions are due, so that the whole book is put together and sent to the printer. So.
Yep, understood.
Okay.
Yeah. And the school committee is going to be aware of that as well, because we obviously want to keep them informed and welcome their input too.
Okay.
Okay. Can we moving on? We did have a meeting with FinCom last week on the 22nd. I think it went very well. A lot of debate back and forth, a lot of suggestions, answered as many questions. Chris followed up today with everything. Chris, did everything go that they requested?
I think so. Well, we followed up right after the meeting, like with, images of the documents, including the slide that you guys saw tonight. And then there were several detailed questions that we followed up on today, including the size of the carriage house, more information on construction costs for the carriage house, a range of construction costs for Lynch. What else? Rental versus the renewal of carriage house. I was able to find that comparison. That goes back to like the spring of 17. So it might be something we could update, today. Things have changed a little bit, including interest rates. So yeah, I think we're good. I asked Megan to reach out if she thought anything was missing.
Okay, thank you. All right. Authorization, you just around 6 o'clock, a letter went out.
Yes, so there's just one on there. It's for the high school. It's for Welch and Associates for $2,280.
Okay. And he was worried about the money that was left. Are we okay with this, Meg?
Wade was worried about it.
Or maybe you were. No, wait.
I'm
Yeah.
worried. Wade's
Okay.
probably worried too.
There was a comment, all right.
At our next meeting, we really need to look at the high school budget, because we're down to around 100 and some odd $1,000. We want to, maybe 200, but we want to make the changes to the restrooms. We want to potentially make the improvements to the parking lot drainage. And I think that was it.
And the auditorium or not?
No,
Okay.
we will not have enough funds to do that. So I want to look closely at what we have remaining and get the committee to decide, what they want to prioritize, so that I have, direction to follow. Otherwise, I'm just going to put, something on hold. So.
Right.
So I'll try to have I'll try to have a summary ready for next meeting.
Great. So Jay, I opened up the email. Looks like this repeats. So I just see the one invoice for $22.80, March 8th. Was that it, Meg?
Yep.
Yes. It's 2 letters now.
It's always been 2 letters. I don't know why it comes across that way. It's so silly. But anyways,
Okay.
I'm not going to try to change the process.
Would you like a motion to authorize payment to Wade Welch and Associates for $2,280 dated March 8th for legal services on Winchester High School?
Yes.
So moved.
Second. Don, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I get the screen?
Yeah, sorry. There you
Can I
go.
ask a question, Meg? Dave, since I didn't want to ask last week, but if I may quickly, Meg, the outfall pipe that's coming into the Judkin Pond, if you do any work, can that still be an outfall pipe coming in, or it would not meet the current DEP guidelines? Are you with me?
I'm with you. I understand. I don't know the answer to that question, and we're
Right,
not
so-
really going down that far. We're only
Yeah,
making
because
some
that
changes.
last week, Chris was, showing the slide of the stone and whatnot, and they're planning to do some work, and I didn't ask anything, but even though it doesn't meet the DEP guidelines, we cannot discharge to the pond, correct? It's the Upper General River, right? If we do any work.
Yeah, the work that Chris was referring to, I think, I mean, I wasn't at that meeting.
Right.
Was to remove a large rock that has somehow been deposited in the pipe there down towards that area. The work that we would be doing as part of this would be up towards, would be adding some, catch basins and realigning a pipe under the parking lot along Nelson Street. They wouldn't be out near Judkins Pond area.
Yeah.
But I don't know the new DEP regulations enough to know whether or not there's anything, but I'll ask VHB, and I trust that they, are up to speed on all the regulations.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Can we get a roll call on the motion, Mark?
Aye.
Brian?
Yes.
Todd?
I approve. Yes.
Colleen?
I
John Miller?
Yes.
Okay, Lisa?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Thank you. So that passed. Other business? Anything we have to discuss?
Jay, just had a quick question. I know you were going to chat with Meg about the OPR and how we can distribute information in the sustainability subcommittee. So I was
right.
We don't have.
I was
to talk
actually
about it
going
now.
to your question. I was putting to Mary Ellen, but maybe Meg can help us. with it.
I'm sorry.
I was asking
Okay.
her what the proper way was. Just that I think they're all pretty busy the last 2 weeks with the town meeting getting everything ready.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I guess for the
Meg, she had a question, or I had a question on the proper way to dispense information that was coming around, but maybe I'll send it to you tomorrow and get your idea on it. I put it to Mary Ellen for just a comment on what's the proper way, channels to do it. So
Okay.
I would offer one thing that it's only a piece of, it addresses only one part of Colleen's question. So long as we're not actively editing documents together online, if there is, so for instance, if there's a PDF of the latest version of the OPR, Colleen, that you'd like the subcommittee to see, we can park that in the folder. So there's actually a subcommittee folder now on the project drive. So you could certainly park that there, and we can tell members where to go look at it, just like we all have access to the agendas, minutes, right? All the documents that Charlie puts together. We just can't be sort of deliberating on it, can't be editing it online, but there's certainly a way to put it there, and we all know where to go look for it.
Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to tell the folks on the sustainability subcommittee that was part of the reason we were pausing on the second date, is that where I was trying to figure out the sort of the not assignment of homework necessarily, but how we can best prepare for the meeting that needs to happen a little bit later than I think we originally anticipated. And so I'll send new dates out. Jay, I'll wait to hear from you.
No, I think if that works for you, what John, what Chris just said,
okay.
to park it there, and
Right.
just no one comment, just don't have a debate on it. It's just for information only. I think
But
that's
people
fine.
can send me comments then
I
on
don't
it?
think they can. No, that's,
Okay.
you have to discuss the comments at your meeting. So
Okay.
they can review, have their own comments, but you have to wait for your meeting to
Sounds good.
take those.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll get a good secretary for that meeting.
Brian, do you have a question?
It's just, I saw the Daily Times Chronicle bidding for the Morocco roof work. Is there anything we should be paying attention to with that, or is that for subsequent discussion, or should that be on a radar in any way, shape, or form?
That project, as silly as it sounds, is not under the jurisdiction of the EFPBC, but we're more than welcome to, review it. But that project consists of the roof and the electrical upgrades, and the decision was made to only go forward with the roof project right now because the electrical lead time, as you know, is so long that we wouldn't be able to get the project complete before the start of school in September. So we're going to put that off until next summer. We're going to probably bid it this November, maybe even earlier, so that we can have everything lined up. But the filed sub-bid is the masonry portion of the roof. There's some repointing and stuff, repair, flashing on the chimney that needs to happen.
Great. Just thought I'd ask since I saw it. And not to beat the dead horse on the feasibility point of all the trailers on option 2, but the electrical service upgrade, it really could be a constraint that makes it so that one option involves full Lynch and the other not.
Great.
Something we should look at. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we just brought new 3-phase power to the building, and that was like that took forever pre-COVID, but I don't know if the power is sufficient to, you know what I mean? Someone to have it, someone who knows what they're doing would have to look at that and tell me if there's enough power.
No, we were happy that the 3-phase, the high voltage was brought up to the building for that transformer. So they're ahead of the game. But still, like Brian said, that nothing says they're going to get it done, but it's better than it could be.
I take up a lot of power here too, so
I know.
John Miller?
I was just gonna say their power is brought up to for the modulars that were bought when they built Ambrose. So they have a separate line coming up, and you've a couple of telephone poles that go right through the middle of the playground to the school,
right,
where the school committee meets.
Okay. Next meeting is April 4th, and we'll have the motions to vote on. And we will have PSR and we'll have after our meeting. So we'll have that. Okay.
I was just going to add, Jay, that Lynch is going to factor prominently at this town meeting. So I think there's going to be 4 articles involving Lynch on the warrant. The select board has asked management to put forward an article for the well field transfer, as you know. So that's really framed sort of as like an agreement between the school committee and the select board. But it might be something for us to think about if we want to vote on that. When you get to town meeting, moderator will often ask what certain committees think. So that's certainly something I would presume that we would support because it's pretty essential for our project. Somebody needs to say that. And then also the select board created a policy back in, I think it was 2017, something like that. It calls for what they called a traffic safety study following any major school expansion project. And the most recent example of this is all the work that was done in front of McCall, reconfiguring the intersection in front of McCall and then around the corner, like by McCall and the church. The idea being that more enrollment brings more traffic and so on and so forth. So we did that McCall expansion. The phase 2 was about an $11 million project-ish, something like that. And then I think we added like $500,000 for all those traffic and safety improvements. So the select board directed Beth Rudolph to put together an article on the warrant to do the same thing for Lynch. We had some discussion with them about whether that needed to happen in the spring or the fall, but I think the board really wanted to get that going in the spring. I don't know if Meg has any details on that, but it would be something for us to be, looking for, because basically the scope of what Charlie and his team are doing is sort of limited, and the select board wants to go further afield. In fact, the policy is so detailed. I think it says up to 1/10 or 1/4 of a mile or something from project sites. And when you think of all the arterial roads around Lynch, that could be a pretty big undertaking. So my understanding is they're interested in not just some permanent improvements that may be needed to support Lynch over time, but they're also interested in what's going to happen on a temporary basis. And if there are any improvements that need to be paid for to help manage traffic on a temporary basis, that might include Meg putting some money towards something up at Parkhurst, perhaps. So I think we should just maybe look to get a little more information from management when it's ready. I don't know if that's something we can ask you to ask about, Meg, just to kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I have a copy of Tool's scope of services and fee proposal that I can share. It's about $72,000.
Okay. I mean, we don't have to do it now, but maybe at a future meeting, it would be good just to understand what that looks like.
Yeah, just remind me that you want to talk
Can I
about
ask
it.
a quick question, Chris and Meg? Just because you brought this up and I had this lingering question. So when the Hornbrook Bridge was done, the traffic study and all this, with all linked together. So I haven't walked by that bridge yet, but is there a pedestrian walkway so the kids can get to school, from the Horn Pond Road to this ledge, when it was expanded?
Yes. Yes, there is a pedestrian. I mean, it's not what I would call pedestrian friendly because you're literally up there against the road, there's not like a boulevard or anything. It sort of separates you.
Sidewalk.
But yeah, there's a sidewalk there. Yes.
So that's only on the one side, right? Okay. Only on the one side of the bridge.
I haven't been out there in so long, I don't remember.
Yeah.
My memory, Geeta, is there is a sidewalk and it's on the Lynch side of the bridge, if you will, as opposed to the field side of the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. All I want to say, I guess, or Science Park and Lynch is totally different. So I think to connect it with the nature, it's on the other side and it would conflict kids crisscrossing with the midst of the cars. So anyways, that's why I was wanting to ask whether the pedestrian bridge already exists, but that would sort of, in the past meeting, we had brought up whether we need to add whether you want to call it a bridge or some kind of a connection. Remember, you were comparing with the VO Science Park and why can't we do it at the Lynch? I just wanted to ask whether when the bridge was done, whether there's an existing pedestrian walkway bridge anyway to begin with. So.
Yeah, but it's a good point. It's sort of on the other side of the bridge from where you want it to be. But I think Charlie put some note in there in the PSR, so we've maybe put a foothold in there if we want to explore that. That's for a pedestrian bridge maybe.
We did. And we also, I think the landscape architect also talked about the possibility of flipping the sidewalk from one side to the other. That's another possibility. The same bridge.
Anything else?
Happy to make a motion to adjourn, 7:32.
7:32. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mac. All right, roll call. Brian?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Frank? Lisa?
Yes.
John Miller?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. See you next Monday. We'll send out information as we get it.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Night.